What's up YouTube, JB back here with another Volvo video. It's been a few years since I did a Volvo, but this time I am doing a timing belt. So I'm going to do it at my friend's workshop here southeast Melbourne in Oakley actually. Shout out to Laszlo and Matty, they run the business here. So they're air conditioning specialists as well as the European specialists. They both have Volvo dealership experience. That's how I know them from when I worked with them back in the day. So we're just going to do this in a workshop environment so that you can see more clearly. It's a bit easier to show the angles rather than it would be with a jack on the floor. And I'm doing it with Laszlo because he's done hundreds of them as well. So yeah, shout out to the guys at Autobreeze. You can find them here at 26 Manton Road in Oakley South. Give them a call if you need anything done on a Volvo or European or any brand. Got some Japanese cars in here as well actually. And some good old Aussie muscle. Of course, what would an Australian workshop be without a V8? Alright, let's get into the Volvo. Alright, so we're just inside the Autobreeze workshop at the moment. This is a good friend Laszlo that I used to work with.
How we going?
Plenty of Volvo experience. We used to work in a Volvo dealership together. That's how we met anyway. So what we need to do first of all is the wheel came off, obviously vehicle jacked up. Some T25 screws held this cover across here. It's just a soft wheel arch cover, which he's learnt a trick of. You can just fold it back and then use one of the screws to just pin it back up into the wheel arch there. So we've exposed the drive belt area here. There's two belts on the outside, but do we only need to get this one off?
We only need, yeah, the inside's AC, we just need to get this outer belt off. So,
yep, okay.
Torque 60, a half inch and a long extension. We'll activate the tensioner anti-clockwise while you have someone grab the belt and remove it for you.
Yep, so that's a highly sprung tensioner. Basically, yep. You turn it and then I flick the belt off. Okay, cool. It's not a bad idea to draw a direction of the drive belt if you're unsure about how it goes back on. It goes around the top of the alternator here and down to the, is that the power steering pump there?
Yeah, down to the power steering pump.
Down to the power steering pump, around the crank and back around the tensioner. So he is just going to turn that anti-clockwise, which will release the tension, and the belt will just flick off the top of the alternator is the easiest way. And push through that way, and then we can fish the belt out from underneath.
Hang that off to the side just there. We're just doing the cam belt. We don't need to replace the belt today, so we're just going to hang it off to the side.
Okay.
And next will be removing the balancer.
So it's much easier to do this with power tools, otherwise the pulley will just turn. So Laz is going to use his
Beg your pardon, 13, sorry.
We'll get 13 with an extension. What size was that one again?
That's a 30 there.
30mm in the middle, hopefully.
So you're going to have to start to rock it.
They can be tight, these pulleys.
Already starting to get some.
Slowly starting to get some movement there.
Yeah, also.
Helps
just to give it a little whack with a soft blow hammer.
I'm there.
nice and easily off.
As you can see, that was tight, soft blow hammer, so you don't damage anything.
And now we get to our lower crank timing marks. So next we're going to go to the top of the motor, get the engine mount off, get our timing cover off, get everything lined up at top dead centre, and get the belt off.
So up the top here, the coolant tank needed to be moved just slightly out the way. An 8mm bolt came out of here, and then you lift up on this clip, wobble it, lift it up. It has a plastic hose attached. They can be quite brittle, so you just be careful with that, and you just move the tank out the way enough to expose the engine mount bolts. We're going to put a jack under the engine just to give it some extra support, so that when we remove the upper engine mount there, the engine's not under strain, and then we can start to access into the timing belt cover. So I'm going to start with taking off what they call the torque rod, 15mm. It's got a ratchet spanner here, but you don't have to have one of those. So these will come out, and then this bolt at the back, and then once I have lifted that out of the way, then we can do these ones. Lift this up. There's a plug on the coolant tank, by the way, forgot to mention that. Unplug that so you get more room. You can completely remove the coolant and the tank if you like, but this coolant's just been freshly replaced yesterday, so we'll leave that alone. So these two bolts come out of here, torque rod comes off. Okay, and then we will get to the 15mm and 13s. So that one 13mm came off, now the 15s. Leave those bolts in there so you can remember which bolts went where. So the top engine mount is off, and now we've exposed the timing cover. So once that engine mount is off, we then jacked up the engine. You want a soft pad on your jack, or something soft, because sorry, the aluminium sumps crack easily. And I've raised the engine slightly so that we can access an 8mm stud that's here. So I've got the ratchet on it. It's not the easiest to get to. If you struggle to get onto that, this other engine mount can come out quite easily, by the way. This lower one here, but we've left it on in this case. So this 8mm stud, I'll show you once it comes out. Not the easiest to access, that one. The thread is quite long. So there it is there. That stud will unscrew, because that's the last thing that is holding on the timing belt cover, and some plastic clips that you just use your hand and you pull those. That's the stud that needed to come out. So, get my fingers around the back to the other clip at the back there, and now we are starting to expose the timing belt. So now you can see the timing belt here. So with a long extension and socket, we've turned the engine clockwise. You always turn it in the direction that the engine naturally moves. So turn the engine until this mark here lines up with the line at the back. So we put some white paint on there so you can see that the timing marks are aligned on the crankshaft. Done the same thing up here on the camshaft. Now we're going to replace the timing belt kit. The roller in there, I can see grease is sort of leaking from the roller. Now the water pump can be done at this stage, but even at Volvo they don't always replace these, they just last forever. If it was a Volkswagen or another brand, they'd always replace the water pump with the timing belt. In this case, the customer does very low kilometres, and there's no sweating. Well, we will check the pulley on it for play, but it is safe. At your own risk obviously, but it is safe to leave the coolant pumps on these. So in this case, on a Saturday morning, and also not available for us to get one, we're going to leave it. But yeah, as I say, we have done this on lots of D5 engines. We were just talking about one that's done 300,000 Ks on its original coolant pump. This hasn't. This has only done around 100,000. But yeah, we're going to leave the coolant pump unless we find that there's play. There's something wrong with the bearings there, but it looks absolutely fine at this stage. So here's our timing marks. There's a tensioner down there that I'll be undoing next. Looks like it's got a 10 or 12mm bolt on it. So this is a quality brand. It's pretty much REN timing belt kit. We have the timing belt, the idler roller there. That's the tensioner right there. We'll mention this later on. This is how you check the tension is aligned up correctly. Got new bolts in here for the idler and the tensioner, and a sticker for afterwards to put on the engine bay to say that we have replaced the belt kit. So with a long ratchet spanner, what size is that?
12mm.
12mm. Just going to slacken off.
You can see now, you can see the tensioner relaxing as we're doing that. Don't have to remove the bolt all the way, just loosen for now. Now we can activate the tensioner and remove the belt.
Okay, so the belt's gone slack now, is it? Go in there.
We'll need a 6mm Allen key for it.
So 6mm hex key next.
We'll need quite a short 6mm for it. I'll come for a lie underneath there. Now we've already got quite a bit of slack in there,
So from underneath, he's going to put the 6mm Allen key into the tensioner.
And just go anti-clockwise, quarter turn. From there now you can see the belt's got a lot of play there. You can just...
Do you want me to get it off top?
Yes.
Oh no, off there's easier first. Bit tight still.
There we go. That's all nice and loose now.
So the belt just flicked off on the tensioner first. It does get a little bit trapped behind a pipe down there. You just got to kind of twist it, wedge the belt out, and I'm just going to get my hand on that coolant pump, and yep, no play. Can almost feel that the impeller behind doing its job.
See on the belt there as well, it's quite dry, getting a bit brittle. A few cracks in there, you know, once these break, a lot of money on the engine, so well worth the maintenance doing it. Not something you want to skip.
Yep, it's very critical. And by the way, I wouldn't be doing a timing belt job unless I was confident with tools. Got a good feel of how tight things should be. Now you can use the torque wrench as well when you're doing the tensioner and fitting the idlers. Yeah, you need a pretty good mechanical understanding, because it is quite a risky job. It's not something that you would not want to do correctly.
Now we'll get our 12mm, remove the tensioner out of the way. We're going to prep it for all our new parts. So we'll remove the tensioner 12mm. They give you 2 bolts in the kit, one's long, one short, so match that up to there. And we'll remove our idler that comes in the kit as well. Depending on your kilometres, you do the water pump at the same time if it's due or needs to be done.
Earlier on, by the way, before I showed you the timing marks on the crankshaft pulley, we actually lowered the trolley jack so you could see that. Now we've just raised the trolley jack to expose the idler pulley here. And that's going to be unscrewed.
Sorry.
So 10mm socket on the idler pulley here. Now this idler pulley feels a bit tight actually, and it was quite wet around the bearings, so yeah, always replace the timing belt as a kit. It's a lot safer to do the spinning bearings whilst you're at it, the tensioner and the idler. So that's come off. You can see it's a bit damp, isn't it? Grease around the...
A lot of drag on it as well.
Yeah, very tight, isn't it?
So you know this could have failed
quite
soon if it was not replaced at the same time as the belt. So
that's the only thing that we found so far really. The rest of it, yeah, water pump feels absolutely fine. That is seizing. So get the new ones.
So obviously match up our new parts before we fit them, just to make sure everything's fine. Like we said, 2 bolts in the kit, match them up. Your longer 12 with the lock-in washer for your tensioner. Got some Loctite on there. Chuck that in there. Do not move the tensioner position before it's installed. And match up our 10mm as well.
Yeah.
For our idler. Now we can clean down our timing area, all the covers, our pulleys, give it a good clean with some brake cleaner, dry it off with a blower, and we can start installing our tensioner and idler.
Brilliant. So before we took off the timing belt, exposed that, by the way, we just had to tidy up here, moved all our bolts away, put a guard cover on. I didn't have this on earlier because it hangs down in the wheel arch. It would have been a lot harder for me to show you in there, but whilst we're leaning over the guard or the wing here in this area, we don't want things falling down in the timing belt area either, so we just had a tidy up and put this on. Now just clean down the area with some brake cleaner. It was pretty clean in there anyway, really. It's just dust and dirt, no oil leaks or anything. So it's ready for the new timing belt kit to be installed. So next I'm going to put the idler roller and fit the tensioner on. So I've got a small torque wrench. We looked up the specs. It's meant to be 22 Newton meters for the tensioner, and they suggested 10 Newton meters for the idler, but it just didn't feel quite tight enough, so we've gone about 20 on that one. So turn the torque wrench until it clicks. So that's now set, and we'll put the tensioner on next, but we won't tighten it up yet until the belt's on. So we're going to guide the belt around the tensioner next.
It's got some thread locker on there as well.
Yep, it comes with thread tape on there to make sure that that bolt doesn't come loose. So brand new tensioner and bolt is just being installed down there as we speak. So he's going to install the tensioner from underneath. It's tricky to access. This is probably the hardest bit at the moment. He's putting the tensioner up from underneath because it's too hard to get the hands in and do it from on top. So, do you want me to put my finger on it there just to steady it? Yep, so I'm just holding the top of the tensioner for him. And he's just screwing that on now. Let's tighten the thread off by hand. Oh, it's moved. Hang on. The tensioner, by the way, the top of it has a cutout, and that sits in like a peg, basically. So the tensioner makes sure that the peg is around the cutout, and that means that the tensioner is in the correct place. So we'll just show you on the old one. What we're saying is there's a peg that needs to line up inside that bracket there.
Before we put our belts on, we just want to double check that the parts are correct out of the box. They haven't put the wrong belt in the box. Get them next to each other, pull a bit of tension. You want to be similar lengths. Don't stress about a little bit of difference. This belt could be a bit stretched. That's packed in the box, so it's got, you know, a little bit of a kink, so it's not going to be identical, but you want it the same. Check it around the other side. Make sure your teeth gaps are the same size teeth on it, and you're good to go. Another thing to remember, your right-in, the engine's going to be turning clockwise, so you don't want to be putting your belt on upside down. You want to be putting it with your right-in facing forwards, turning over clockwise. Okay.
So it's going to pass it down from the top. I'm going to help steady the belt up the top whilst he wraps it round the crankshaft, around the coolant pump on the left there. Pull the tension tight, but without moving any pulleys up to the top. So we've got the tight side over here and the looser side where the tensioner will be. I'll put my finger on the top of the belt to hold it there for him to help the belt go on. So that's going round. There we go.
There we go, round our crank, up, backwards around the tensioner, over the top of the tensioner, gauge onto our water pump. Not going to see much, but we can show you once we've got the belt half on there. I'll get Johnny to jack up the engine now for me. And you can jack that motor up a tiny bit, Johnny.
Just raise the engine. Is it coming up? Yeah.
That'll do.
Yep.
So, now we're at the top. We want to have quite a bit of tension on our top pulley, on our passenger side here, on the left-hand side of our cam pulley. We want to keep that nice and tight as we're coming up. Tuck this passenger bit back around the idler. All right, when we got it around here, I'm going to hop underneath. Johnny's going to keep his finger on here. I'm going to activate the tensioner, give us a bit of slack, and we'll be able to slide that back over. It is easier to get it around the cam pulley first and slip it over that idler because there's not a lip on that at all, okay?
Yep. So you'll get the Allen key, will you? It is quite tight, isn't it?
Alrighty, so.
I'll try and get some light in here.
Right, that should be okay there.
So he's put the Allen key in to try and loosen the tensioner right now to give us a bit more slack.
I'll come up to the top and I'm going to tuck that around. You can see your teeth line up like that. Slides on. Now we're stuck here, but we want our slack on this side. Very easy. Bit of muscle. That goes in there. Slide it all on.
Making sure the pulleys do not
Making sure
turn,
the pulleys don't move, exactly.
and that the timing marks are still aligned.
Got that there. Now, a little bit of slack there. More slack on this side here. Make sure when we're pulling that belt up and over that we're not pulling the crank or the camshaft over. Cam's going to be hard and the crank being a diesel, a lot of compression. Our petrol engine's going to be a bit more lighter to come over. We've got that set here now. Next is on our lower bit here. We want to turn our Allen key until the little dick on the top of the tensioner lines up in between our markings. So we'll do that. Once we do that, you can see that's in position, that's pulled up there. Someone will have to go from the bottom and lock up the 12mm. Then we'll double check our marks. If our marks are spot on, we'll do 2 revolutions of the engine, check that the tensioner is still set correctly and our marks are there, and that is it. Sometimes you may have to adjust the tensioner once or twice to get it in the perfect position. Now, we got our 12mm on here. Better to use the socket because the spanner won't clear the Allen key. Once again, I'm going to pull up on the Allen key, sit that in its center position, which we'll show you in a second when my hands are clear. And we're going to lock up the 12mm on the tensioner. Now you can't see much at the moment, but we will show you what we've done in just a second. And then we'll torque this up at the end when we're happy with our final timing, okay? That's there. If you can see, we've got our tensioner. Right, just because you can't see too well down there, because it's a cramped area, I'm going to show you the old tensioner. There's our 12, here's our 6mm for the adjuster. That is located onto the notch on the engine. To set our timing, our tensioner, we are turning this Allen key around until that sits in the middle, and then we are locking up our 12mm, so that cannot move anymore. That'll stay in that position. This will move back and forth as you wind over the engine, depending on what the tension is doing. So once you've got that set to the center, lock up your 12, check your timing marks. We'll do a couple of revolutions of the engine and recheck when our marks are at top dead center that is still in the center there.
Awesome.
So, spot on. Got our mark to the back of the timing case mark.
Yep.
And back to the top of the cam. Mark to mark.
Yep.
We're going to turn the engine over forwards. You never want to turn over an engine backwards when you're doing timing. So we're going to do 2 revolutions round clockwise, get our marks lined back up, double check our crank is spot on, and check our tensioner position. One revolution.
Quite tight, so big ratchet's very useful.
Coming up to our marks, we're going to slow down now. And that is looking spot on. Our crank is where it needs to be. Our top is where it needs to be. Like we said, our tensioner needs to be readjusted. Our tensioner is just shy of its mark, so we need to loosen off our 12mm, adjust that 6mm over a bit, tighten it up, do 1 more revolution, and that's it.
So the tensioner's just been adjusted slightly. It's going round again. Never hurts to triple check. Keep going round. Make sure everything's fine. Obviously, if it suddenly locks up, then you've got a timing problem, so you'd have to start again. But yeah, it's always good practice to make sure that you can rotate the engine. It's going to, even by hand, you can feel the belt tension, make sure it all feels perfect.
Our marks are lined up now, and on our second revolution, our tensioner is sitting smack bang in the middle, where it needs to be.
Perfect.
Okay?
It's very hard to show, by the way, because it's deep down there.
But yeah, if you want to have a look on the old tensioner, once we've done our first revolution of the engine, we were hanging back here, so we've just readjusted it to sit it in there. We've done another revolution, and it's sitting where it needs to be now. Another thing, guys, just to check, pretty common on these Volvos, this is a clutch type alternator pulley. So clutch type meaning that it can engage forwards, but when it rolls backwards, it has free slip to it. So if you get it and it's really tight going back and forth, it's on its way out. You can hear it, you can feel it. You want it to be nice and tight when you spin back and it's a freewheel, okay?
Yeah, it's a freewheeling pulley, exactly. Special clutch type.
Now guys, we're going to start our reversal of removal. We're going to start installing our covers. Just the reversal of how we pulled it apart. Top plastic cover first. That's where our stud goes through there, so just make sure that lines up nicely. You can't really fit it wrong. You've got your 3 clips to guide you there. Sorry, a 4th one down there as well. Can be a little bit finicky. Just don't force it. It is plastic, but you know, just within a couple of seconds here. You know, it's just gone into place nicely. We haven't had to force it. Everything's clipping on.
You can hear them click in.
You can hear them clip in. Double check you haven't got any wiring pinched behind the cover, any coolant hoses, anything like that. it will sit a bit floppy until your stud is reinstalled here. Okay.
Now, just to mention, the timing belt cover didn't feel quite right, didn't look clipped in at the bottom. So where the bar is where he's pointing with the bar here, just under the pipe, the bottom of the cover, it needed to be slid up enough to then push down, because they locate into the lower cover first. Once that's clipped down into there, then all of these clips here will go in properly. So it's a little bit fiddly. It took both of us to wobble that around actually.
Just another tip as we're reinstalling our harmonic balancer. Harmonic balancers are very common to split. You've got an inner metal ring, outer metal ring that the belt runs on, piece of rubber in between to pull out any vibrations or anything. Very common for splitting. The center will stay where it is and the outside pulley will just turn. So inspect that rubber, have a look at it carefully, because the paint does go over it and look like it's cracked, but that's just the paint.
Just flaky paint,
so flake the paint off, just inspect that rubber. You'll normally see a lot of mushrooming of the rubber out external from here if it's gone. This one is perfect, so not very common on a Volvo, but good practice to check anyway.
And if there was rust around there, we'd clean it up. But
exactly.
There's not. The engine is all clean where it goes on there as well, so no need to do any cleaning there either.
No, perfect.
Yeah, you can look up the torque specs of the crank pulley nut if you wanted to, but normally I've do up with a gun. Basically, they're very tight.
Yeah.
I might get that torque spec.
They're about 100 newton-meters generally. You know, it's similar to a wheel nut or so.
Yeah.
But just a zap on the rattle gun is fine as well. So no lock nut or anything like that needed on the nut, or you'll never get it back off. So.
Yeah. And they're a press fit as well from memory, aren't they?
Yes,
so even if the nut came loose, that
gear's not coming anywhere. Correct.
No. So the engine mount was slightly out of alignment. When we lowered it down on the jack, the bolt hole wasn't lined up with this. So I got lads to pull the engine forwards, and you want to get your washer mark to line up exactly. You see where it's clean under here, you want to get that lined up properly, because if your engine mount is not bolted up where it came off, it may vibrate afterwards. So that's just another tip for you. So there you have it. It's actually quite an easy timing belt kit to replace. The alternator drive belt was new, by the way, so we put it back on. Normally I would advise replacing that because it has to come off anyway. So yeah, please do me a massive favour so I can keep helping you out on how to fix your cars. If you can just click like and subscribe.